This week, we're talking about the 7.2 kernel. It's finally out, and there's some interesting news already around 7.3. Drivers are getting dropped, and there's an AI storm that the developers are having to deal with. And then Canonical is looking to automate the move from C to Rust. Omarchi launches the Omacom Foundation with $8 million. NVIDIA's GeForce Now is officially on Linux, and a lot more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 267, recorded Saturday, August the 22nd. I used to be cool. Hey folks, it is Saturday and it is time to geek out about Linux and hardware and software. We've got a new kernel release. We've got a mini, not quite rants, but interesting stories from the Linux kernel mailing list. We're talking Canonical, a whole bunch of stuff. It's going to be great. Get in here. I've got the guys. We are, three of us are back. One is still playing hooky. I got Ken and I got Jeff, and we've got some fun stuff to talk about. How are you guys today?
Struggling with the bit, trying to get out.
He's struggling with the bit. Yeah, I think we all are. Jeff, do you want to talk about that thing that you mentioned before the show started? Is that something you want to mention here?
Nah, we'll just...
Okay. Jeff has a thing, but we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to go on. I had a thing this week too, and I probably shouldn't talk about it either. So, this is a show of things we're not going to talk about. I don't know how well that's going to work for the podcast, but anyway, we do have some things we are going to talk about. And Jeff is going to lead the charge on that, and that is we've got a new kernel.
And the kernel's name is?
Oh, I don't know. There's probably a code name for it. Jeff, do you know what's the code? If you want to, you can talk about 7.2 and I'll go look up the code name because I don't remember what we're at.
Yeah, I don't know what the code name is. I mean, 27 herbs and spices. So Linus Torvalds released version 7.2 of the kernel on August 16th. What's new, you ask? Well, the update adds several new features aimed at improving performance, expanding hardware support, and cleaning up old code. One of the biggest changes is the new approach to how the kernel schedules tasks across the computer processor cores. The update introduces cache-aware scheduling, which we've talked about before on the show, but the really short version of it is the system tries to keep related tasks running on processor cores that share the same cache. Keeping tasks together like this cuts down on the unnecessary data movement between cores, which improves overall speed. When you do things like jump NUMA nodes, you gain latency because even though all the cache, for example, can talk to each other, you have another step instead of going the cores talking to one cache. Now the cache has to transfer data to the other cache and then transfer it to the core. So it just adds overhead. So the more you can be cache aware and understand the topography of your CPU, the better off you are. 7.2 also introduces a new scheduler, a GPU scheduler. Yes, I said GPU, graphics processing unit. Described as fairer, this system is designed to keep interactive programs responsive even when the graphics card is under a heavy workload, without slowing down the other tasks running on the system. Pretty much like a task scheduler, like you'd have for the CPU, but just for GPU workloads. So it kind of the same overall theory, just making sure that one process doesn't just bog the entire system down. But speaking of task scheduler, the default fairer setting, which was for the CPU scheduler as well, it's getting reverted back to the standard FIFO, first in, first out, since there was a late regression found. So it'll probably show up, they'll probably fix it. It'll probably show up in 7.3. The release brings several updates for graphics hardware. One such example is the AMD graphics cards using the AMD GPU driver now have initial support for HDMI 2.1 fixed rate link feature, and we have talked about that. This allows for higher bandwidth connections to newer displays. On the processor side, the kernel added support for Intel's upcoming Panther Lake R series of chips. We had more Rust expansion in this release. 7.2 adds Rust language support for IBM System 390 mainframe, along with support for a Rust library called Zero Copy, which helps programs handle memory more efficiently. File systems also received some love. The BTRFS or ButterFS file system now uses large folios where multiple memory it now uses large folios. Large folios is where multiple memory pages are grouped into a single large unit by default, which reduces overhead and thusly speeds up the file system. So think of it kind of like, instead of going, oh, I need this chunk of memory, I need this chunk of memory, I need this chunk of memory, it can just grab a bunch of those memory pages at once. So it's like, you can think of it like files. Instead of grabbing one file at a time, as in file folders, paper for you kids out there, you can just grab a whole stack at once. Saves on trips. The SMB file system, commonly used for sharing files across networks, gains support for compressed files now. So that'll give you a little bit of a speed up. Developers also used this release to remove old, unused code. The kernel formally dropped the long deprecated string copy function, and like I said, it's deprecated because it's been marked for removal for some time. They finally just got rid of it in 7.2. 7.2 also removed more old 486 code, basically making the Pentium the new lowest standards. Now, if you have a 486 or older machine, then you need to run an older kernel version, though I also have a link to a video in the show notes where they talk about, realistically, how many of those old 486 systems are running today are going to be using a modern kernel. They're probably going to stay on their old 2.x or 4.x kernel and chug away till they die. A lot of these are in kind of more like appliances where you're not running the latest, greatest operating system. Because they did make the 486 for quite a while, but it was then, running things like washing machines, internet devices of things, kind of low end stuff like that. So not stuff you're just going to be champing at the bit to go, hey, we got to have the newest kernel. Take a look at the 3 articles and 1 video linked in the show notes for more details. And as I say a lot, there's a ton of fixes, features, and updates I didn't cover for the sake of brevity. And they go into much more detail and link to the actual updates so you can see everything that changed. And right now, the merge window is open for 7.3, and we'll keep everyone up to date on all the new features making the pull requests in the upcoming weeks. So happy reading.
Yeah, so we've got some more news later in the show. I'm tempted to actually dive into it right after this, but as to why some of those old things are getting removed from the kernel. And it basically boils down to, in the past, all that code could just sit there and, it was pretty static and nobody cared. And
nobody looked at it.
And nobody looked at it. Now we're at the point where it's being looked at again and people suddenly care. Because reasons. We'll get into the reasons. But yeah, 7.2 looks pretty exciting, really interesting. It doesn't have, so the one thing that I'm really looking forward to is the full AMD HDMI 2.1 support. And I don't think that's in there yet. It's not complete, at least. Last time I checked, we were gonna have to wait for either 7.3 or 7.4, depending upon when everything landed and turned on by default.
Let's hope we don't have to wait for 8.
Indeed, 8's going to be quite a ways away. They generally go to like 7.19, the .19, and then instead of doing a .20, they'll jump to the next big major version.
Because you've already had a 7.2, and putting a 0 after it's going to confuse things.
See, I thought
they do a .10. There are multiple ways that versioning can work, and some of it makes more sense than others.
And my jokes are terrible.
Well, yeah, we knew that already.
Okay. Yeah. And I was thinking they had 2.1 fully turned on, but you're right. It's still initial support. So yeah, it's
parts of it. Yeah. Parts of it have landed. I think it's off by default. And
yes,
I don't think quite enough of it has landed in 7.2 for it to be really good yet.
But it's all in the graphics card itself.
Well, yeah, if you mean that you can do it without running a dongle. So that's what I'm doing right now, because the monitor behind me, it's only got HDMI. It does not have DisplayPort or anything else. So I've got DisplayPort and then a dongle to convert that back to HDMI 2.1.
So it doesn't even have a VGA port.
No, I don't think it does. I don't think they make cards with VGA ports on them anymore. Or if they do, it's on like the little header, what would be a blank PCIe cover. Yeah, and then they just they chop out the bits to where that you can put a VGA plug in there, and then it's just on a ribbon cable. I've seen that on graphics cards. Although I don't know that they do that anymore. I mean, VGA is old.
That's expensive to do.
Well, and they haven't made VGA monitors for a long time. I mean, why? Because even if I don't know of a reason why you would do it unless you had some weird custom hardware you were trying to interface to, and you'd have to special make
10-year-old VGA.
Yeah, at this point, probably what they do is just you get an HDMI to VGA converter, and it's and it's nothing more than an FPGA on the inside, right? That's what those are anymore. All right, well, let's move on. Let's talk Canonical, unless Jeff, you have something else to jump in there.
Oh, I was going to say, Ken, you might want to lower your mic just a touch.
I'm a bit loud.
No, he's hiding behind it.
You were kind of hiding,
bouncing.
There you go. Perfect.
How's that?
That's great. Don't move it. Yeah. All right, Ken's going to talk Canonical. What are those crazy guys up to?
Would you believe funding research?
Yes, I would.
Because this week, Bobby Barsoff and Saurav Rudra wrote about Canonical funding research into automated C to Rust translation. This funding will support a 3-year research project to make it practical to automatically move large, mature software projects from C to Rust. The project is a partnership between Canonical, the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom. You might want to visit there while you're over in the UK, Jonathan. And of course, the UK Research and Innovation. Now, it's aiming to build an all-encompassing platform that can take a C repository running into hundreds of thousands of lines and translate it into Rust that's safe, behave yourself, correct, and maintainable Rust program. Now, according to Saurav, getting C to Rust automatically means solving a few separate problems, and the system tackles them in sequence. First, it has to break a massive code base into pieces small enough to work without losing track of how those pieces depend on each other elsewhere in the code. Sounds like putting a puzzle together, breaking a puzzle apart and then putting it back together, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Then the actual translation happens, handled by language models trained on real C to Rust conversions with the goal of writing code that looks like something a Rust developer chose to write rather than C dressed up in Rust syntax. Sounds like a cross-dressing there. Next is the harder task of proving the translated code actually behaves like the original. Now, this will be done with fuzzing and formal equivalence checks. According to Bobby, the new project will use a hybrid or neurosymbolic approach. This combines machine learning with traditional program analysis, testing, and formal methods. Canonical plans to use AppArmor and SnapConfine as real-world case studies, while making it very clear that AppArmor and SnapConfine are not being rewritten in Rust right now. These projects are only being used as case studies to test the technology, and there is no plan to replace their current versions with the research results. Now, I'm going to recommend reading Bobby and Saurav's article to understand why you should care and how this fits into Canonical's broader adoption of Rust.
Yeah, it's interesting to see that they're they're using the AI for this project, and so many things are moving in that direction. I'm seeing people on Twitter and various places that are like, I was a hardcore AI skeptic, but my graybeard friends told me I was being dumb and needed to try again. So at least one notable troll on Twitter could take that approach. And then like his next tweet was, I've automated all the things. It's amazing.
Now, I want to recommend that everybody start lowercasing AI so you can tell the difference between AI and Al.
Poor Al Williams over at Hackaday. He gets flack all the time. Written by Al. Wait, no, the other one.
Or just use a different font,
I guess.
Where the capital I has bars at the top and bottom.
Top and bottom.
Yep.
Like it's supposed to have.
Actually is a right angle bracket.
Like it's supposed to. These darn kids with their darn TypeScripts, get off my lawn. Weird fonts.
Courier never let me down.
Indeed.
So do you think we'll start seeing more Rust coming out because of this?
I don't know. It's definitely going to be a useful tool for a certain group of people, but there's a lot of, when they talk about formal equivalence checks, there's a lot of things that are just going to be challenging to, so like it's the 80-20 rule, like you can get 80% of the work done, but it's the 20% that takes most of the time. I feel like that's going to be the case in trying to move to Rust and get away from C and all of those things. Because and
you're never going to get rid of the last 5%.
Right. Well, I mean, Rust and C are very different languages, and it's just they work differently. And there's just cases where I've come to believe that it's basically always a mistake to deeply integrate the language in the package manager. Like the way Cargo works, I just cannot stand it. And from a security viewpoint, it's kind of got terrible problems built into it because you're
worse than Python.
No, it's the same problem as Python, and it's the same problem as like Node has, JavaScript doing Node.js with NPM. It's when you download packages to be able to compile, and it's actually, Node has the problem of downloading packages at runtime. It's just not as reliable as the old C approach. If you have either the libraries are baked in, or they're grabbed through your systems, like your build system, or through your system libraries. So maybe that's just me being the old man and yelling at the kids on my lawn, but I don't like Cargo at all.
Well, I was going to say, stepping back slightly, there's still assembly in the Linux kernel. I mean, there's certain things that you're just not going to be able. There's those corner cases, special things that you can't just say, we're going to 100% Rust, or in almost, most highly complex projects, you're going to have some weird little things that just.
Well, I'll throw one in for you. Every computer needs machine language.
Well, yeah, but
that's
you can
what they run on.
You can get any language to compile down to machine language. Ken dropping the real truthy truth bombs on us there. All right, let's take a quick break, actually, and then we'll get back to some not at all controversial news right after this. So we teased that, and this one is interesting. It's about Omarchy, which means it's also about DHH. The guy behind Ruby, the guy behind Basecamp. You may love him, you may hate him. There's, the internet has opinions on people, and him in particular. But Omarchy is an interesting distro, and they've had enough success that they've decided, DHH and some other people in the tech world, some tech bros, have decided to put their money where their mouths are, and they have created the Omacom Foundation, and it is intended to be the sort of the controlling interest, the group, the nonprofit that holds the trademarks, does the infrastructure funding, basically support the open source projects and developers of Omarchy, the Linux distro. And they have 8 founding patrons, And it's Toby Lutke from Shopify and Patrick Collison of Stripe, Michael Dell of Dell Technologies, Jack Dorsey of Block and other things, Matthew Prince from Cloudflare, Brendan Eribe of Sesame and Oculus, Jason Fried of 37 Signals, and DHH himself. And they've each put up $1 million. So Omicom Foundation starts its life with a cool $8 million in its bank account. And they are actually, in the DHH's poster even says, this is a ridiculous sum of money. I intend to make sure it lasts a long time. And their intent is to make the year of the Linux desktop come true. And they're already doing some interesting things with that, like funding. I think I've seen that they're probably going to fund Arch. It looks like they're going to fund, what's the desktop manager that they use? Hyperland. They're going to fund Hyperland. Would not surprise me to see that they were to fund some things like Ladybird and a few others. It really, really interesting to see. And like, I get it that this group of people are obnoxious. Some people find them obnoxious, let's put it that way, and have various problems with them. But at the same time, like, they are working to make Linux better, and they're working to fund some of these places, and that's good. We like that. So yeah, not controversial at all. I don't know what you're talking about. No problems. We won't get heat on Twitter about this.
Nothing consequential about them being an exclusive Hyperland sponsor.
Indeed. But I will say, like, putting the joking aside, like, it is cool to see yet another. It's a Linux distro that's become somewhat popular, and they're trying to do it the right way and have a foundation behind it. They're trying to make sure that it's funded. So I mean, that's genuinely a good thing.
Yeah, it's probably got a little more staying power than some of them that kind of show up for a release or two and then poof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I'm like, what's the whole kind of foundation behind it? It is based on Arch, origin in Denmark. Like you said, the Hyperland desktop.
Mm-hmm. And
they're trying to just make a really smooth, easy distribution to use. From what I'm just looking on DistroWatch, so, take that with a grain of salt. But
you might also want to check out omarchiplugins.com.
Oh, they have a whole plugin thing, huh? Oh, that's cool. I don't know. I haven't run Omarchi on anything. Maybe I'll try to throw it on a machine or put it in a virtual machine and just take a look at it and see what it's all about. Because kind of like one of the ideas behind Omarchi is to give you a kickstarted Hyperland install. Because Hyperland can take a long time to set up and really get tuned the way that you want it. And I kind of get the idea that Omarchi is just like, it's DHH's personal Hyperland setup. He's like, I don't want to set this up every time. Let me just make a distro around it.
And I've only used a few, tiling managers a few times. It just kind of not for me.
Sure.
But my KDE right now, which I do love KDE,
mm-hmm.
I'm using the default themes. I turned them on to dark mode. That's about it,
Yeah, but you do tiling though, don't you? Because you've got the ultra widescreen monitor, and so you tile it to make it act like it's 3 monitors.
Kind of manually for work. I do. I have predefined positions, so I can hit the shift key, drag a window in an area, and it snaps to that tiling space. But like right now, I've kind of have my show notes on the left, or the show document on the left.
Mm-hmm.
I have everybody else in the middle, plus my show notes in the middle, and on the right, I have the Discord where I can see some of the chat and things like that are going through, or I can reply to chat. But most of the time, I'm not running enough windows that it really matters.
Yeah, indeed. I think it'd be interesting to watch what happens with this. And like I said, I think it'll be fun. I'll give it a try sometime. Maybe when the new, I guess it depends upon the timing here, but when the new Framework 13 Pro comes in, I may throw Omarchi on that just to start with.
Oh, there you go.
I probably
You
don't
want
want
to travel with though, March?
So that's the thing. I'm just thinking about that. Like if it comes in just a few days before I have to go back to Europe, I probably don't want to travel with something I don't know. I'm going to want Fedora on it for that. But outside of that, yeah, I would love to play around. Just use that as my my play laptop until I really need
unless
to
you
travel.
dual boot.
I don't want to mess with that. I've done that before. I've done the dual boot and the tri boot thing before. I'm too old and too busy to fight with that. So, let my son here in a few years, he'll be the one dual boot and try booting everything. He'll be like, Dad, look at this. This is so cool. I'm like, yeah, I used to do that. I used to be cool.
Look, I've got all three running at the same time.
I've done that too.
I used to do a bunch of that too. I'm running different desktops. I'm trying this. I'm trying that. I'm custom building kernels. I'm kind of, and it kind of after a while is like, I'm fine with how this is. Turn it to dark mode, and that's all I need.
Yep. This is true. All right.
Well, I do have a custom wallpaper, so that's my customization of the.
Really rice in the desktop there, Jeff.
Yeah,
custom wallpaper and everything.
pretty bland rice,
Indeed. All right. Well, we want to talk about NVIDIA and GeForce Now. What's going on there?
We're going gaming.
Get in, losers. We're going gaming.
and this one might be a good one for Ken. So NVIDIA has moved its native GeForce Now client for Linux out of beta and into a full stable release. So the app's been in beta, sitting in beta for months. And, first of all, you might be going, but Jeff, what is GeForce Now? For those that don't know, it's a cloud gaming service. And instead of running games on your own computer, NVIDIA runs them on powerful remote servers. The server streams the game video back to your screen, and your computer sends the button presses back to the server. So basically, it turns your maybe not very powerful machine into a display device. Basically, it is rather polarizing service because some love it, based on the hardware, the games they can play and all that, and others hate it. It kind of depends on how you feel about NVIDIA and the pricing models they have. The more money, the higher resolutions and eye candy you can have, and it's a subscription service, so that's another thing that especially now has become more of a hot topic. But that all being said, as of now, we officially have it for Linux. The big addition here is flat pack packaging. So NVIDIA now hosts its own dedicated Flatpak repository separate from FlatHub. So instead of pulling the app from FlatHub store, you need to add NVIDIA's own repository and install it from there. Now, there's only 2 commands needed, so it isn't like a real hard process. And because it's Flatpak based rather than tied to a specific package format, that helps with wherever you want to load it. The app is sandbox, self-updating, portable across distributions that support Flatpak, which I would be surprised if there's any major ones that don't. And that way, it's not just running on the one NVIDIA officially certifies. Now, just for the record, the official certification is Ubuntu 24.04 LTS and newer. Though, like I said, if you can run a Flatpak, you should be able to run this. It just, you might be a little bit more on your own versus having official support. On the hardware side, requirements are not bad. Remember, the actual game's running on NVIDIA servers, not your local machines. So you need a dual-core x86 64-bit CPU at 2 gigahertz or faster, 4 gigabytes of RAM, and a GPU capable of H.264 or H.265 decoding with Vulkan. At least on the NVIDIA side, I believe it was the 1000 series graphics cards are capable of doing this. So if you have a 1000 series, that's enough to run this. Performance-wise, the Ultimate tier subscribers can stream up to 5K resolution at 120 frames per second, or you can push as high as 360 frames per second at 1080p for your competitive low latency games. Though okay, low latency. I mean, it's never going to be what it is on your local machines. So, I mean, when you say low latency, it comes with some asterisks or quotes when air quotes when you say that. To fight the lag, NVIDIA has tuned its DLSS frame generation pipeline on the server side, refining frame interpolation and response handling specifically to cut down on input lag during these, your high refresh rate sessions. But you still have your network connection in there, and you have that lag from the server to your screen. You got that round trip. You send a keystroke, goes to the server, it runs it, and then it sends it back. So that's why I'm like, low latency, asterisk, see footnote, air quotes, all that. The update also cleans up a handful of issues that were in the beta release, such as account connection failed, errors when the client tried to sync to a user's Steam or other digital storefront libraries. Non-English keyboard layouts were also causing input mapping problems during active streaming sessions, which now has been fixed. So localized keybinds pass through correctly. NVIDIA additionally cleaned up the video scaling and aspect ratio detection, which has been producing some black bars or incorrect scaling on certain display setups, including multi-monitor and high refresh rate configurations. Take a look at the article linked in the show notes, and in it you'll see links that give you more details on the changes, how you can actually get it. And, like I said, it's not for everybody, but no matter how you like to play, happy gaming.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a buddy that really liked the GeForce Now thing, the streaming. And I just always found it a little, something about it was a little off-putting, that idea we're streaming games to a server and back rather than playing them locally.
And that's why I said it's very polarizing.
Yes.
Most people aren't like, well, I don't know. It's probably, if you know about it, most people are either, I love it and it's great for making my old hardware, awesome,
Mm-hmm.
or people despise the whole, I'm paying a subscription. I hate subscriptions. I don't feel like I own the game. All that. So, but it's an option out there. And I think the more options we have, the better.
I suppose that's true. What you got there, Ken?
It's like a Rubik's Cube.
Looks like a psychedelic Rubik's Cube. Something about your lighting setup does not like that. I think it was subtracting all the green out of it. I think that's what's going on there.
Well, would you
we can see through it?
would you use the GeForce Now, Ken? Because I know you've got some older hardware that.
Well, that's what I was looking at. The hardware requirements, it says that you need to be running Ubuntu 24.04 LTS or later.
That's the official. If you can run a flat pack, you're probably going to be okay. It's just
now
it's
also
certified.
mentions that when selecting a windowing system, use Xorg for NVIDIA GPUs and Wayland for AMD or Intel GPUs.
Yep,
makes sense.
And
that
then
was
it says,
weird. And I was going to double check that one, but I didn't have time to double check to see if that's really the case still.
On the hardware requirements, dual core x86 or x64 CPU at 2 gigahertz or faster. My old Lenovo ThinkCenter is 2.8 gigahertz AMD Athlon 2.
There you go.
It would support it.
It might work. I bet what it really comes down to is if your GPU supports the accelerated decoding of H.264, H.265, whatever it is that they use to actually do the streaming. That's probably the most important thing.
Think an AMD ATI Radeon 3000 would support it?
I don't know, because I don't know what exactly they use to do that streaming. They may have some way to make that work.
Yeah, 264 or 265 works. But it decodes through Vulkan. So it's got to be able to Vulkan decode.
Or have a Mesa driver version 24.2.8 or later.
Okay. Yeah, your mileage may vary then, but what would be fun is to see like the really old potato machines that people get it running on. If somebody has a really weird or really old machine and you make it work, let us know about it. That would be fun to see.
Well, and realistically, if you're playing something, imagine something like Baldur's Gate or one of those kind of turn-based combat or something like that, where you can, I have a half a second of lag. Well, it might be a little annoying, but it's
Sid Meier's Civilization 3.
Well, I think Jeff's point is you can play the newest Civilization with the super nice graphics, and if it's lagging on decoding, it doesn't matter because you still get to see the really nice graphics.
Your latency is not really a big. It's not a fast Twitch game. You're not playing a Quake or a Doom or something like that where you've got to be fast. It's the game engine's just sitting there waiting for your input and like, oh, what's your next move going to be?
Yep, absolutely. All right,
Mario Super Paint.
Not quite. Let's talk about imagery though, and the new PSD support inside GIMP 3.4. Ken, what's new there?
You're still in all my stuff that I'm going to tell you talk about.
Turnabout is fair play, my friend.
Yes, it is. But let me go ahead and thank Bobby Barsoff and Marcus Nestor for doing all the research that I used for putting this little bit of information together about some new features and improvements coming to at least my favorite open source, free, and cross-platform imaging editing software. Yes, we're talking about GIMP version 3.4, or the official title, GNU Image Manipulation Program. GIMP's quicker to say. Now, according to Marcus, the biggest change in GIMP 3.4 is a new default project file format that Jonathan had mentioned that follows a more common zipped XML structure, supports multi-page and animation features, and enables faster saving by updating only parts of the file instead of the whole project every time. Now, the binary XCF format will still be supported because I know some of us have really old XCF projects that we've worked on and we want to continue using. Now, according to Bobby, XCF has been GIMP's primary project format since 1997. With this new design, it will also lay the groundwork for something that we have long wanted. I know I have, autosaving. Now, non-destructive editing is also receiving significant attention. Filters can now be applied non-destructively to layer masks, and the filter popover has been redesigned so you can manage effects on both the layer and its mask from the same interface. GIMP 3.4 also promises spectral blending support for the My Paint brush tool to simulate the effects of blending physical pigments in digital art, plus support for using the gradient tool non-destructively. Support for the Photoshop file format, sometimes referred to as PSD, saw some great improvements in the upcoming GIMP 3.4 release, which promises PSD metadata exporting for TIFFs and JPEGs, PSD descriptor import support, editable text layers, support for importing solid color shapes as vector layers, and support for adjustment layers and modern layer styles to be shown as their general graphics library, or sometimes referred to as GEGL, in other words, their equivalents. Now, I've only touched on some of the many improvements that Bobby and Marcus covered in their articles. So if you want all the details, just follow the links in our show notes.
Yeah, so neat to see things continuing to come along. You remember when I think it was GIMP 3 was like considered almost to be vaporware? Like, oh, it'll never come out. We've been waiting for GIMP 3 for years and years.
I was
And
thinking
we're
that
about
same
to see
thing.
GIMP 3.4.
Yeah.
Well, they had so much to redo from 2. I think they kind of said they kind of programmed themselves into a corner a little bit. So making jumping to 3 was a major rewrite.
Well,
Or that's the way
they
I
had
understood
to
it anyway.
retool to go from GTK2 to GTK3. Wait till they start retooling for GTK4.
Well, my understanding, it was kind of a lot like KDE. So when KDE jumped from 3 to 4, there was a whole lot of work to kind of isolate itself from, or making it a little more modular and easy for, like in KDE's case, the Qt changes. My understanding is GIMP is the same way with GTK. So when the next revision comes out, the next whole number, it's not near as bad to jump to it. They've kind of made the changes so they don't get stuck like they were, if that makes sense.
Nothing breaks.
Yeah, so the changes can be done a lot easier and quicker without breaking everything else. Mm-hmm. That's the way I understood it.
So it won't take another 10 years.
Right.
Until there's another massive library change that they have to reprogram everything for.
Well, supposedly it's supposed to be easier now. They went and said, we learned our lesson on this one, so we're taking these steps to make these library changes easier.
Famous last words?
I was kind of thinking that myself, but
I thought it was hold my beer.
That too. There's a lot of famous last words, actually. What could possibly
go wrong?
What harm
could there be in this?
Yeah. All right. So what's next? Let's see. We're going to take a quick break. That's what next is. And then we're going to talk about some KDE. So we'll be right back after this. So it is almost time for us to all go and roll out KDE 6.8. Well, sort of close. We're taking a look at the This Week in KDE, and they are working towards, ideally in about a week, a soft freeze. And then early in September, the 10th of September, they're looking at a beta 1. And then hopefully we'll see Plasma 6.8.0 release on the 14th of October. And if we go and take a look at This Week in Plasma, a few things that they're looking at. One of the ones that sort of surprised everybody, us Americans at least, us English speakers, that we didn't know that this wasn't supported, is when you use a system in a language other than English, you couldn't use the search box. Well, you could. It boils down to, can you search in one language and find it in another? And it's like that's sort of it's on one hand, that's sort of a strange feature, but on the other hand, so much of the world does business in English. Like, it makes sense that you're going to want to be able to search for mouse, for instance, and get the mouse page, even if you're running your system in French or in Spanish or whatever. So that's sort of a nice what's the term they use? Quality of living. It's a nice quality of living change, particularly for those using other languages on their systems. There is more work being done in the login, the lock screen in particular, and the ability to switch which authentication type you want to use, and a nicer UI around that. Which really the screenshot they've got here looks quite nice. Switching to which thing that you want to use. Apparently, you can also use smart cards to log into a KDE. I didn't know that. Unfortunately, I don't have a device with a smart card reader. I may eventually need to get one of those. You can now no longer set your resolution to ridiculously low values. The alignment of buttons on the lock screen is better. A lot of little things like this have been fixed and getting better. Automatic brightness now adjusts in a more intelligent way, and the audio volume widget is placed in a panel in its standalone form, so the pop-up starts out large enough to accommodate everything without scrolling, which is really nice, because trying to scroll, I don't know if you've ever had this problem, but trying to scroll on a UI where the scroll button changes things on the UI can be a little challenging, and I've run into that too. Error messages are getting better. The highlighting non-default settings is getting better, particularly in the Roma desktop page. Cursor feedback effects now dodge screen edges so that they're now always fully visible. That's handy. Looks like the Yeah, the extra, they've got a little video of it here. So like if you have an extra something going along with your cursor that it's either, like in this case, it was a bouncing icon showing that something was starting. It'll now move so that you can see that even if your cursors ran all the way over to the edge. There's bugs fixed in 6.7, some crashes fixed, multiple issues in system settings. Apparently the digital clock widget would do a text overflow and didn't look great. All kinds of fun stuff that they've got in here. A bunch of interesting bug fixes and things coming for 6.8. Definitely something to look forward to. What do you guys think?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Isn't it?
Trying to think how long it'll be before I see it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that at the beginning. October 14th is when they expect 6.8 to fully release.
And Ubuntu 26.04 is going to upgrade to it?
I don't know. I don't know if Ubuntu will or not.
I wouldn't be surprised if they did, because it will be 26.10, and they're, .10 releases just throw caution to the wind. Let's just give it a shot.
Oh yeah, the .10, but I think for my podcast system, I'm going to keep it on 26.04 for a while. It's
an LTS, right?
Yep.
They may leave it on the previous KDE. They may leave it on 6.7.
6.6 or 6.7. I can't remember.
Looks like they're working on 6.6.7. I remember we had quite some fun talking about when 6.6.6 came out. A very notable release number there.
Yeah, right now I'm on 6.7.4.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what I'm on. I'm trying to update some machines. They're way behind. I haven't updated. I haven't rebooted in forever on the desktop behind me in particular.
Yeah.
I think, Ken, you should just 6.10 comes out, you ought to go to KDE 6.8 and then podcast on it. Just throw caution to the wind, pedal to the metal.
I'll do that on the other partition. That way I've got a backup plan.
Ken's still cool enough to dual boot.
Ken's got his belt and suspenders. He's like, okay, I will not wear the suspenders, but I'm going to have them right here just in case.
Yep. Hot swap between the two.
Yeah.
All right.
Hot swap and suspenders.
Yeah.
It's always good to have a backup plan.
Yep. All right, Jeff. Well, something about all of our desktops and all of our laptops. They got fans in them. And I don't think this story is about laptop fans, but it might be about desktop fans. What you got? What's your cheap little gizmo?
Well, something that we have not had in a bit is Jeff's Hardware Corner. That changes today.
Changes now.
It changes now, which is also today. Which, no matter when you listen to it, it's always today. But anyway, I have a bit of hardware that some of you might be interested in. Well, memory and storage is up in price, and we won't even talk about GPUs. But you want to upgrade your system? Cases and fans and things like that are areas where, as an enthusiast, you can still play and upgrade for a reasonable price. Well, you're keeping the same, CPU, GPU, memory drives, all that. The other stuff is probably a good time to upgrade now. Arctic Cooling just did something almost no PC enthusiast hardware vendor bothers to do. They wrote their own Linux kernel driver for a product, and they got it merged into the mainline kernel before the hardware even shipped. The product is the new Arctic fan controller. It's a 10-port USB fan controller that costs $9. So the story actually starts back in March when an Arctic cooler engineer named Aro Serrero posted a hardware monitoring driver for what physical product the driver was for, since Arctic didn't have a fan controller with a USB interface at the time. So nothing in their lineup could be used with this. The driver itself is small. It's only around 300 lines of C code, and it uses the standard Linux HardwareMon, HWMON interface to report fan speeds and set PWM duty cycles across all 10 channels. The driver kept getting refined over the following months and eventually landed in the 7.2 kernel. Then at the end of July, Arctic finally announced the actual product on social media, calling it open source and Linux ready right in the launch announcement. When have we had a Linux bragging in a launch announcement? It's, for something like a fan controller. Yeah, some of the big hardware, server stuff, but for a fan controller? Color me impressed. Michael Larrable says that in 22 years of covering Linux hardware, he's never seen mainstream PC cooling or peripheral brand do this. Companies like Thermaltake, Corsair, NZXT have never contributed kernel drivers directly. It's usually left to community developers to reverse engineer USB protocols after the fact, if it happens at all. On the hardware side, the controller connects to the system over USB for monitoring and control. Power comes from a separate SATA connector, so it doesn't rely on the motherboard fan headers. And all 10 channels use individual PWM regulation. So Arctic does ship Windows software for it, but on Linux, the mainline HardwareMon driver is what does the job. And Michael Larrable confirmed that it works on out of the box on Ubuntu with a 7.2 kernel. Once the kernel config_sensors_Arctic_fan_controller option was enabled. Because it plugs into the standard HardwareMon sysfs nodes, it immediately is compatible with existing Linux fan controls tools like cooler control and hardware dash monitor. No special software is required. What you can already get open source, it works with it. At roughly $9, Larrable calls it the first sub $10 product he's found worth reviewing. And with 10 fan channels and day one mainline Linux support, he says there's currently no better option for Linux users who want proper desktop or server fan control. Take a look at the article in the show notes for more details and links to where you can purchase this awesome controller. And yes, you do need the 7.2 kernel. So if you're running an old LTS, you might need to upgrade or wedge the newer kernel into your system or backport the code. Either way, this hot summer, keep your cool.
Well done. Yeah, it's I actually have a potential use for this now that I think about it. I've got a couple of cabinets that I've built that are bookshelves, and then behind the bookshelves there's a column for airflow, and I do a couple of rack mounted computers. One's my home server and the other is my main desktop, and I've got a line of fans that blows air sort of up that chimney, and at the moment they're just plugged into essentially a power supply. I could totally use something like this fan controller to control those. Interesting. I'm trying to think of things to use it for, just so I can support them and buy one. Yeah, I've got a couple of places where I might be able to use this. Have I ever shown you guys pictures of that? Have I posted pictures in the Discord of my crazy rack mount setup? If not, I'll have to remember and do that.
If you have, it's been so long that we probably need to repost them again, so people wouldn't have to search back to day one.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get some pictures. The problem is that after traveling so much, my office is a wreck, and I don't know that I can get to the cabinet where the server is, for instance. You think I'm joking? I'm not joking.
In all fairness, before you were traveling, wasn't your office kind of always a mess?
Jeff's so mean to me.
Oh. Well, I can't always pick on Ken.
True.
Yep. I thought I was your target.
Well, don't worry, Ken. We'll pick on you. We got to mix it up.
We share love around here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about Network Manager and what's new there. And then we're finally going to end up with that 7.3 news and some weird kernel stuff. Like, this is why they're removing things from the kernel. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
All right. Now that we're back, I agree we should start talking about network management. And this week, Bobby Barzov and Marcus Nestor wrote about the latest maintenance update to the default open source networking stack for almost every major desktop-oriented distribution and many server platforms. We're talking, of course, about Network Manager, this time version 1.58.1. According to Bobby, one notable change concerns WPA3 networks. The new release fixes automatic connection to SAE-based WPA3 networks using profiles configured with the key-mgmt or key management equals WPA-PSK, addressing cases where Network Manager failed to reconnect automatically. Network Manager 1.58.1 also supports the 6 gigahertz value for the band property on Wi-Fi connections and ensures IP version 4 forwarding is properly enabled in mobile broadband data interfaces. According to Marcus, Network Manager 1.58.1 improves support for private connections, the ones that specify a user in the connection.permissions property to use CA-cert or system-CA-certs rather than using the 802.1x CA-path and phase 2-CA-path properties, which are no longer accepted. It also sets the parent interface by name for NBFT VLAN connections in the init-rd generator to avoid race conditions before boot, during boot, forwards the DNS server port number to systemd resolved for DNS URIs, improves the normalization of Bluetooth NAP connections, and fixes multiple crashes discovered in the Network Manager 1.58 release. Now, since I have only skimmed over items mentioned in Bobby and Marcus's articles, I'm going to recommend reading them for more in-depth information, if you're so inclined.
I had a moment while I was out of town that where the Linux Network Manager, and particularly the KDE network interface, the UI side, really impressed me because it made something very, very easy. I had a Raspberry Pi connected to a big Hub 75 screen, which is like a individual pixel screen. They get used a lot for like the display screens, stuff like that. And this Raspberry Pi, like I'm trying to trim down the things that I travel with, because I usually, I'm kind of paranoid. It's like, oh, I might need this, throw it in. I might need this, throw it in. And I end up with, bags stuffed full of stuff.
And no clothes.
Well, no, I usually have clothes too to spare.
At least one change.
Although when I went to Vegas for DEF CON, I did indeed start running out of clothes because I was sweating through multiple outfits in a day. But anyway, that's you guys didn't want to know that. That's TMI. So anyway, this previous travel, the last one I went to, I'm like, I'm not going to bring the portable monitor. I'm not going to bring the keyboard. I don't need those things. And then I needed to work on something on the Raspberry Pi, and I didn't have a monitor to plug it into, and I didn't have a keyboard to control it with. And it's like, oh, what am I going to do to be able to get into this thing? I just needed to make a quick code change and recompile something, and then the rest of it would work automatically. I had it already set up to where you plug it in, it turns it on, it runs the service, you're good to go. And what I ended up doing was, in KDE in particular, when you set up a new connection, you can opt for a new, let's see, what exactly does it call it? A wired Ethernet, and then in parentheses, shared connection. And I thought, well, that sounds a lot like what I want to do. I instead of being a DHCP client, I want this machine to be essentially the DHCP host. Plug it in directly to the Raspberry Pi. It'll come online. It'll get an IP address. I can SSH into it. It's like, it's kind of a pain to set up, but I know how to do it. I'll do it. But no, I saw this. Click on it, new. You give it a name, and it basically does what you want it to do. I turned that on, plugged it into the Pi. It came up. DHCP came on. Pi connected to it, and I was able to pretty easily find the IP address that it came up on. SSH right into it, got my work done. It was really nice. And of course, turn the Wi-Fi on so I can get into it without having to do this, all that good stuff. But I was actually really impressed how easy Linux and KDE in particular made that. So good. Network managers really come along a lot in the past few years that makes stuff like that really easy.
So I got a question. How if you're so you're running a router, say, that's got OpenWRT.
Mm-hmm.
How does this tie in with that? Is it kind of a second layer of defense, or does it enhance what
it's
like
actually on your desktop?
Right. But I'm wondering how if you're running something like pfSense, OpenWRT, a more advanced router type software, does this enhance that, or is it like another layer of security, or does it kind of just redundant?
I mean, there's a decent chance that your router may run Network Manager internally to turn the interfaces on and off. But essentially, Network Manager is like the replacement for the old sysvinit scripts that turn your network cards on. And so Network Manager probably assigns like the easy to use names that they have. It probably probably runs the DHCP client. It detects that something got plugged or unplugged. Network Manager is also the thing that contains like it contains your like Wi-Fi passwords, and then we'll start WPA supplicants to make the actual connection over Wi-Fi. It's kind of the brains that it orchestrates what your network does inside your machine,
and also helps to, during boot up, establish your VLAN connections as well.
If you're playing with VLANs, it can help with that. All kinds of stuff. Linux networking, there's a lot of fiddly switches and things that you can do between VLANs and virtual connections and internal bridges. Lots of fun stuff.
And that's where that's why I'm asking, because I'm not I know the basics, but it gets deeper.
Like the Ethernet cord in here, turn it on.
Yeah,
I know port forwarding and some firewall stuff and the basic stuff like that, but.
But do you know NVMe boot firmware table for VLAN connections?
That I don't know anything about. I will say that I've had some fun, particularly doing like a server to switch connection when the switch supports VLANs and so does the server. You can do fun things like you can do a virtual bridge inside the server and connect the physical port into that. And then you can run VLAN packets over that bridge. And then you connect your individual virtual machines to the same bridge. Or you can create virtual network cards and give them VLAN tags and then connect your virtual machine to those. And so, you can layer these things in different ways, and you can make really, really complicated, if you want to, network setups. But you can do a lot of fun things. So like, one of the things that you can do, and I've done this before, is if you want to have multiple networks, but you only have one NIC on your Linux server, but your switch supports VLANs, then you can tunnel all those different VLANs down the one network interface and split it out on both sides. So, basically do a fan out in the switch and a fan out in your server. And then you can also have a virtual router inside your server and feed that VLAN directly into it. And then in the router interface, you can go in and say, now this VLAN is WAN, and this VLAN is LAN, and this VLAN goes off to the guest network. Now, you can get really, really fancy if you want to.
And then you've got another VLAN just for your VMs to connect to the internet through. I've
done that before as well. And I've also got a VLAN that's specifically for my IoT stuff that I don't necessarily trust. I kind of went crazy when we set the network up here at the house, and it's pretty complicated, but it works. It's not really giving me trouble since. So something must have been
just confusing.
Right. If you don't know what's going on, it is. I've got notes that help me remember what everything is.
Just don't lose those notes.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're in a Google Doc, and I think also downloaded a place or two. So not doing too bad there. All right, let's talk about Linux 7.3, the one that's coming after the release we just had, and let's talk momentarily about some AI stuff going on in the kernel. So the network changes for 7.3 just got merged. But the headline here is that developers are completely overwhelmed due to AIs and LLMs. And this is actually part of I believe it's part of the merge message that went along with this. That's the notes in the merge. And in the recent weeks and months, they have been bombarded with patches, continued craziness, and they're taking a couple of steps in order to keep up with the overload of patches and codes that's being written by AI. Let's just be clear about that. Like this is the guys out there now using Claude Code, using Gemini, all these different tools to much more quickly write code. And it has changed the balance for a lot of open source projects, including the kernel. And one of the things that they are doing is that they are dropping old drivers. And so we talked earlier in the show about old architectures of CPUs being dropped. And it's the same thing here. They're some of these drivers that it's like there's hardly anybody, maybe nobody using this particular driver. They're going to drop it because it reduces the maintenance burden. And then the other thing that they're doing is they are doing more triage using AI itself. And this is something that we've seen in the projects I work in too. At DEF CON, I was sitting with some guys, and one of the guys was one of our developers, and he was describing this process where it's like, somebody new comes in with a patch, and obviously it's written by AI. And he goes, so I let my clanker talk to their clanker, and they go back and forth until they're both happy about it. And then I put my human eyeballs on the code. And it was funny to me to hear this, but it's what you got to do, because the amount of pull requests coming in are just they're getting so crazy, so much code being written so quickly. And so this is happening in the Linux kernel as well. And so actually reading from the pull request, it says the merge request, we are completely overwhelmed, of course. The glimmer of hope is that we secured sufficient LLM budget and access, thank you, Meta, to run reviews with multiple frontier models on each patch. This eliminates some hallucinations. That said, in terms of reviews, the LLMs can only do so much. And then they said something else I found very interesting. The sad truth is that our APIs, especially for rare events like PCIe errors, timeouts, etc., have always been racy. And by that, they mean there's race conditions in it. There are, 99% of the time it's going to work correctly, but 1% of the time the other code path finishes first and you get a bug because of it. Have always been racy, and now LLMs don't let us ignore that. I expect our direction for the next release will be to tweak the reviews a little bit more, but to start shifting focus to letting the LLMs take care of the busy work, managing patchwork, automating common process complaints, editing commit messages, and maybe applying patches which already got reviewed by tags from people we trust. So really interesting to see that the kernel is feeling the heat, feeling the problems of code being written so easily and so quickly, but also they've got some ideas for how to get over the hill and put the AI to work, make the AI part of the solution as well as it was part of the problem. And then there's a second, also AI-related story, and that is that Torvalds had a problem, and he wrote some code to fix it. And that's because he is running an Intel Arc Xe video card on his primary dev computer, and it was causing him problems. And he said it was the debug session from hell, but it was enormously helped by an AI doing much of the grunt work. Apparently, the way that he was doing this was, and this is sort of a technique that I've used as well. It's, hey, AI, here's the problem. Do you have any ideas? Okay, now let's start adding debug code. And this is something the AI can do very quickly. Like, it's just grunt work. It's boring to do. The AI can do it quickly and can probably do a better job just because it's so boring. You end up writing dumb messages. Like my traditionally my debug message of, did the code get here before it errored out? It's literally just here 1. It's like here 2, here 3. And I would just sprinkle these throughout the code so that I can actually watch in the debug output where something is getting to. And it's like, that's the dumb way to do it. The AI can do it better. It can actually put more interesting things in there. It can do, more variable values so that you can have more idea what's going on. But Torvalds tells the story, and he says, the AI several times stated flat out that this thing we were trying to do is impossible and unsolvable, and we should just write a report about it. He says, I suspect those things have been trained by people who are not quite as stubborn as I am. But while the AI was ready to give up several times, it did keep adding debug code and analyzing it faithfully when I pushed. Credit where credit is due. And then the answer, and this was what happens so much of the time, it's basically a one-liner fix. It's a bogus round up to round down. And so it was literally a rounding error. But he says there were 24 more patches adding debug information to all of this and 18 kernel boots to finally narrow it down, which is just hilarious to me. I'm glad to know I'm not the only one that goes through that much trouble trying to understand a bug. But Torvalds has written some code and pushed it to the kernel, which he doesn't do very often because he normally just answers emails, which I don't know. He seems to have thrived at that new job of answering emails instead of writing code. But I when I answer too many emails in a row and I haven't written any code, I really start to miss it, and I got to go back and write some code to keep my sanity.
So my question is there still code in the kernel for supporting this?
I don't know. What is it?
It's a US robotics modem.
I don't.
Your green screen is.
Yes, your US robotics modem must be dead because it's a ghost. We can see through it.
Yeah.
Let's see what is it?
Let's see here.
What kind? Is it a like literally dial-up modem?
Trying to think how to do this.
You have to turn off your chroma key. What kind of interface is that PCIe it plugs into, or is that?
I don't think that's PCIe.
Or is that like an ISA, or what? It
probably a PCI modem.
I don't know if you can make it out there now or not.
No, not really.
Yeah, it's we see the solder joints pretty well, and we see the connector, but
that's a great background, Ken. You should run that for your whole background. That's awesome.
There,
Ken
can
is
you
now,
make
for
it
those
out,
listening, Ken hit warp speed, but oh, there we go.
I see that it's UL listed.
But what's the connector on it?
Yeah,
no, that plugs into the PC motherboard.
Is it PCI? I'm guessing it's old. It's old
PCI.
I was going to even maybe ISA or.
Yep.
So it's PCI.
Those things were always iffy to, particularly the one that
I'm not sure if it's one of the old Win modems or not.
Yeah, I was going to say the old Win modems. They were sketchy for getting working on Linux.
There we go.
In fact, I want to say sometimes they would show up as audio drivers because that's literally the way that they worked. So I don't know. You'd have to plug it in to find out. If you have a modern computer running a modern kernel that's still got the right slot for it, plug it in and see. Let us know.
You're going to be on pretty old hardware,
and then see if I can receive a fax.
I guess, yeah. Do you have a phone
line
line
anymore? If I can find software for that.
See if you can find a phone line. Goodness.
Who's going to be sending you the fax?
My printer. I think it's got a fax connection on it.
Now you need two phone lines.
Nah, one phone line, straight from one end to the other.
That doesn't work. You gotta have some voltage in there somewhere. Phones are weird. You gotta have a line level voltage for it to be able to send something. You can get kits that would let you do that, but yeah, you would have to have line level voltage and ringing voltage, I think, to make that work.
Probably.
It's more complicated than you would think. You can't just plug the one into the other and make it work.
They were never designed.
It's not like Ethernet.
It's not like Ethernet.
Nope.
Absolutely.
See, and I never used one of those old ports for back when they were going. I was on Amigas, and all mine were like serial connections and stuff to an external bit of hardware.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that is it for our stories. We're going to come back and talk about something that is like Ethernet as we get into our command line tips. We're going to first take our last break of the show, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. All right. Jeff's got our first tip, and my notes here say that you're talking about mini DLNA, and I thought I knew what that was until I went and clicked at it, and then I was very confused. So take it and let us know, what are we looking at?
All right. So, on this show, we've talked about Plex some, since Ken and I both run it. We've also talked about Jellyfin, which it's kind of an open source version of Plex. Sort of. I mean, it's along the same veins, but it's not derived from Plex. Jellyfin's historically had a few more rough edges, but a lot of people love it, and it's getting better all the time. So it's getting close, and what they are or can be used as is DLNA servers. Well, DLNA stands for Digital Living Network Alliance, which is a set of standards that lets you share and stream music, photos, videos between devices over your home, Wi-Fi, or wired network. It allows computer, phone, or storage drive to send media directly to a smart TV, a game console, Roku box, so on, without extra applications. Sometimes, though, when you want to stream a DLNA device or stream to a DLNA device without a ton of overhead, and it's something like you don't need a full-fledged Plex or Jellyfin server. In that case, there's mini DLNA. It's a dead simple DNLA and UPnP-AV server, and these days, a lot of distros package it under the name of Ready Media, but the config files and the service still go by Mini DLNA. It's Ready Media and Mini DLNA, same thing. Now, I'm not going to go into the install, as the major Linux distributions have directions. I do want to be clear about what this is and what this isn't. So what this does have is low overhead local media service, simple folder-based administration. It works with many existing DLNA clients, no user account layer required, and useful for modest server hardware. It does not take much to do this. Now, what it is not, there is no full media management web interface. This is all command line. No routine server-side transcoding. If your device does not handle the format you have, Mini DLNA is not going to transcode. That's where you get some of the complexity in for like the Plex and the Jellyfins, where they can transcode. That's not what this is. Playback depends on client codec support. So that's kind of what I just said, is if it can't handle the file format you're sending, that's it, you're done. And discovery can be affected by LAN isolation. And basically, how easy is it to get from point A to point B on your local network? And to stress this is also it's just for local use case. And in the documentation, they tell you, do not expose this to the external internet. Keep your router port forwarding disabled, limit service interfaces, use firewall rules, whatever's appropriate for your trusted LAN, because the whole no user count layer required. This is just to stream files locally. So there's none of the security overhead. There's no complex anything in there. If you enable the library, everybody that has access to your machine can see what files you have. So if you have some private files, don't put it on this if you're worried about people seeing it. That's not the use case for this mini DLNA. Take a look at the article in the show notes, and if this is what you need for your home, then give mini DLNA a look, since it can run on some pretty minimal hardware. And sometimes you have use cases where it's like, I'm just trying to get my file from my computer to my TV, and that's all I need. So give it a look, and happy streaming.
Yeah, I'll have to play with this. That sounds like it could be really, really interesting for moving stuff around on a whim.
Yep.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's just easier than, or maybe you have something that doesn't have a TV, maybe it doesn't have a Plex codec or Jellyfin codec, and that's what you're running, but it can discover mini DLNA and makes it handy.
That old Raspberry Pi can have the mini DLNA and the USB, external USB drive hanging off of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really the limiting factor on the hardware is not really CPU, it's network and the drive. How fast can it, depending what you're sending, how fast can it pull the data from your storage to dumping it on your network?
And then go to I could go to my Sony DVD player that I've got that I know supports DLNA and then pull it up and find out whether or not that particular format can be played on the DVD player.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. All
but
right.
I bet it would be if you had VLC running on it.
Probably. I mean, VLC is the video LAN client. That's the sort of thing that it's designed for. All right. Up next, I'm over here playing with photos of my fan setup. Up next, Ken is going to talk about rclone.
Yes, I am. And with rclone, last week I covered how to use the rclone list remotes to list all the remotes in your rclone config file. This week, I'm going to cover how you can mount those remotes on a mount point for easier access using the rclone mount command. Now, it allows you to mount any of the rclone's cloud storage systems as local file systems in the Linux using the file system and user space. Let me go ahead and bring up my terminal here so I can demonstrate. And is that going to be big enough for everybody to see?
Probably not.
That better? Or do I need to?
I'm not seeing
we
anything.
don't see it at all yet. I'm trying to hit the right button to get the logo out of the way. And I've not found it yet.
Zoom it up a ton, Ken.
Actually,
Hit enter a few times. Actually, I think it's probably what we need to do.
no, you're not seeing my back.
We're not seeing
Found
you.
it all.
We're not seeing you at all. That's why.
You're seeing me, but that's all you're seeing.
Right. It's just
On a blank
behind you.
screen. But it looks like there's some text really small in the upper left corner.
That's the logo.
Hit something like fast fetch or neo fetch and see if you're on the right screen.
There we go.
There it is. That's perfect.
Okay. But I've gone ahead and listed my home directory. And one of the folders or directories that I've got here is the external. So let me go back and list what's in there. And it's called external because it's used for mapping folders from my Think Center and when I'm running it, the Pi to this system. Pi's off right now, so there's nothing in it. But if I go to list the remote Think Center, you see that. Now, what I'd like to do is in this folder, go ahead and I'm going to create a mount point for my Google Drive using the command make directory, which I'm going to recommend go back and watch episode 66 where we talk about it. So I don't have to talk about it today. So now that I've made that, you'll see I've got Google Drive there. But right now, there's nothing there. So I'm going to use the rclone mount command. Now it has several options that you can include. Let me go ahead and paste it in. For those of y'all listening, I just pasted in the command rclone mount Google Drive : and then I'm telling it to mount it to my home/external/Google Drive with some flags to run it, rclone as a daemon. And then I set the VSF cache mode to writes. That way it caches the files locally and allows normal read-write operations. Or you could set that to full if you want. Now let's go ahead and hit enter. Yes, it's going to take it a minute. And now we go back and list external. And that's my Google Drive. So I could actually potentially run or manage, go in, delete stuff. All. And you could do that with any of the cloud services that you may have set up for with rclone to manage. Now, when you're done, you do want to unmount that. And the reason why is that you don't want to just leave it hanging there and arbitrarily boot with the possibility of something not being fully written. So to unmount it, you're going to use the fuser mount, which I forgot to look up. And once it's unmounted, there you're back to nothing. And of course, we've covered how to remove directories in the past, so you can do that. But of course, you're going to want to use the RM directory, and there I'm going to tell it to remove home/external/Google Drive. And again, I'll do a listing, and now you see there's no such file or directory. But I did not delete anything else. That's the advantage to using the RM direct remove directory, or RMDIR, instead of the RM command.
There you go.
Down and dirty way to mount your cloud service so you can manage it as if it's a local file system.
It's really useful. Also, it's a great way to get files back. If you accidentally deleted something, you can get your snapshot back without having to do like an entire, rclone it back the other direction with everything.
Yep.
So yeah, super useful. All right. I've got a command line tip that we have not covered, and I'm sort of surprised that we had not covered it. This is one that you can really break your computer with if you're not careful. So do keep that in mind. Make this a bit bigger. There we go. And that is I2C detect. And the first command to run is I2C detect-L. And that's going to list the devices that you have. And it'll show all of the I2C devices on your machine. I2C, by the way, or I2C, you sometimes hear it called, is like a serial bus for like embedded electronics. So you get a lot of sensors end up being on those serial buses. I ran the second command here, and that's I2C detect, and then the number. And so let's pick one of these. We're going to try it. So I could run like I2C detect 0, and that's going to run it. I need to run it as root. And it'll then say, this could be dangerous. This might confuse your I2C bus. And actually, I ran this on the machine behind me, and it turns out that the I2C bus I was on then was my video card. And so the whole screen froze for about 30 seconds when I did this. We're gonna throw caution to the wind and be brave. If I disappear or you stop hearing me or any of those things, that's because this was something important. Let's see if it finds anything. Yeah, okay. So we've got some interesting data here. I'm trying to remember what the blanks versus the dashes mean. And I want to say that is nothing was found, and then the dashes may mean that you got back like a null value. So there isn't anything that it wants to talk to us on any of those addresses. And so this is the way that I2C works. You send out essentially a packet over the wire, and you have an address that you assign it to. And essentially here, we're just sending a ping to each of those addresses and saying, hey, is there anything there that'll talk to us? And we didn't actually get anything back on any of these. And like I said, it is possible to really break your machine doing this. So I'm not going to continue probing around on things. But that is I2C detect. Run that on a Raspberry Pi sometime, and you'll see some interesting devices there for sure. But yeah, I2C detect, that is my command line tip. And then I've got a link off to a website with some more info on it.
And I think my Google foo says that the dash means no device or chip is present at the address indicated for that column and row reference.
Right. Yeah, I think the double dash means no device, and I think the blank just means that it didn't get a response back, or maybe it didn't even try that address at all, although that's not what it said it was going to do. It said it was going to probe addresses ranges 0x08 through 0x77, so that should have been most of them. But I don't know. That's different than I've ever seen. And, of course, your results will vary based on what hardware you've got.
But if it says UU for that particular location, leave that one alone.
What does the UU mean? I don't remember.
Address is already in use by an active kernel driver.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think you wouldn't be able to touch it then. It just wouldn't. I don't think the kernel will let you.
Google says do not try to use it manually.
That's probably fair. I would agree with that. Just don't try. Decent chance you'll break your computer.
With a link to die.net.
I will say also that, do note, folks out there listening, that messing around with I2C is one of the few ways that you could legitimately permanently mess something up. There are very few ways that you could permanently cause problems to your machine, but messing around with I2C buses is one of those ways that you potentially could, because that's, in a lot of cases, the I2C bus is what you use to do firmware updates. And so, proceed with a bit of caution, I would say. But yeah.
Do it on an old system that you don't need anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to do that.
If you brick it, you won't cry.
Indeed.
Especially if it's already been acting like it was bricked. You may get it back.
Yeah, you may learn something. Sometimes the lessons are painful, but you'll learn something.
Those are the ones you remember.
That's true. Absolutely. All right. I'm going to give each of the guys a chance to plug something if they want to. We'll let Ken go first. What do you have for us here at the end of the show?
Well, I'm going to go back to the old standby today. Backup, and definitely have a backup plan.
Have a backup plan. Absolutely. All right. And Jeff, do we have poetry?
We do. I was going to mention, if you try to friend me on LinkedIn, I am on there. You need to mention something about the Untitled Linux Show, or else I'll probably just ignore it because I get so many spammers and whatnot trying to connect. And so mention it if you want to connect. But I don't really post anything, so it's a pretty boring follow. But we do have poetry this week. Wires like a maze, tripping on my tech devices. Bluetooth, where are you? Have a great week, everybody.
I love it. All right. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it very much. As far as me, I normally would have Hackaday back in the background, but I've got the wrong page pulled up. I think you see where I was trying to log into Steam. Realized I wasn't logged in. Went to check something. We talked about gaming, and I went to check something on Steam. Anyways, but you can follow me at Hackaday. That is where Floss Weekly lives these days, and we're having a lot of fun over there. Have some really interesting interviews and some new ones coming up in the future. And other than that, we just want to say thank you to everybody that watches or listens, whether you get us live or on the download. We appreciate it, and we'll be back next week on the Untitled Linux Show.
Hey, everybody. Leo Laporte here, and I'm going to bug you one more time to join Club TWiT. If you're not already a member, I want to encourage you to support what we do here at TWiT. 25% of our operating costs comes from membership in the club. That's a huge portion, and it's growing all the time. That means we can do more, we can have more fun. You get a lot of benefits, ad-free versions of all the shows. You get access to the Club TWiT Discord and special programming like the keynotes from Apple and Google and Microsoft and others that we don't stream otherwise in public. Please join the club. If you haven't done it yet, we'd love to have you. Find out more at twit.tv/clubtwit. And thank you so much.